Sunrise crept through cracked blinds. Alani woke on her couch, body stiff, shoes still on from last night's shift. A pan sizzled in her kitchen. Her breath caught. No one had keys to this apartment. She stood slowly, heart hammering. When she turned the corner, she froze completely. A man in rolled sleeves stood at her stove, flipping pancakes like he owned the place. Broad-shouldered, expensive watch, completely out of place. He looked up calmly. "Good morning, Miss Price. You slept better than I did." Her voice came out strangled. "Who?" "Damian Brooks," he said gently. "The man you saved last night." Her stomach dropped. The billionaire, in her kitchen. Her neighbor's kid peeked through the cracked door, eyes wide. Damian's expression held something she couldn't read. "We need to talk about what happens next, Alani." Welcome to Life in Stories, where every moment holds the power to transform everything. If this story touches your heart, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories to life. Now, let's begin. The first beams of sunrise slipped through the cracked blinds of Alani Price's apartment, casting soft golden lines across peeling paint and second-hand furniture that had seen better decades. The light was forgiving in a way the daytime never was. It hid the water stains on the ceiling, softened the chipped edges of the kitchen counter, made the threadbare couch look almost intentional. Alani woke stiff and disoriented, her body twisted at an uncomfortable angle against the worn cushions. She was still fully dressed in yesterday's black work pants and wrinkled white button-down, the faint smell of fryer grease and coffee clinging to the fabric. Her shoes, scuffed sneakers with soles that needed replacing a month ago, were still tied on her feet. 27 years old, and this was her life. Double shifts, falling asleep in her uniform, waking up sore in an apartment where the heat worked half the time, and the neighbors argued through paper-thin walls. Outside, the neighborhood was stirring. A bus rumbled past, shaking the windows. Someone's car alarm blared briefly before cutting off. A baby cried 2 floors down. The usual symphony of a place where people survived more than they lived. Alani groaned, rubbing her eyes. Her neck ached. Her back protested as she tried to sit up. Then she heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A pan, sizzling. Her heart stopped. Someone was in her kitchen. Alani sat up slowly, pulse hammering in her ears. She lived alone, always had. Her apartment had one lock, old, rusted, barely functional, but this neighborhood taught you to keep your door shut and your business to yourself. No one visited. No one had keys. The sizzling continued, steady, confident. She stood carefully, bare feet silent on the cold linoleum floor. Her breath came shallow as she crept toward the kitchen, every nerve screaming that this was wrong, that she should run, that she should. She turned the corner and froze completely. A man stood at her stove, broad-shouldered, tall, wearing dark slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. His back was to her, but even from behind he radiated a kind of calm authority that didn't belong anywhere near her run-down kitchen. He moved with practiced ease, flipping something in her dented frying pan like he'd done this 1,000 times. Imported maple syrup sat on her chipped counter. Real butter, still in its expensive wrapper. A coffee maker she didn't own brewed something that smelled rich and dark and nothing like the instant crystals she rationed every morning. Then he turned. Alani's breath left her body. Damian Brooks, 38 years old, founder and CEO of Brooks International, a man whose face appeared on magazine covers and financial news segments. A billionaire who lived in a world of marble lobbies, private elevators, and boardrooms where decisions moved millions. He stood in her kitchen, completely at ease, holding a spatula. "Good morning, Miss Price," he said, his voice low and steady. "I trust you slept better than I did." She stared. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. He plated a pancake, golden, perfectly round, and set it on her scratched countertop. "You," her voice cracked, "you're in my house." "I am," he agreed calmly, pouring coffee into a mug she recognized as hers. "And you really don't remember last night, do you?" Her mind scrambled, grasping at fragments. Rain. Heavy, relentless rain. The diner door swinging open after midnight. A man stumbling in, soaked through, suit torn, breathing like he'd been running. Fear in his eyes. Raw, human fear. Her coat around his shoulders. A grilled cheese sandwich. Her voice, quiet and steady. "You don't need to be a machine here. Just breathe." A walk through dark streets, flickering streetlights, her unlocking her door because he looked like someone the world had chewed up and spit out. She swallowed hard. "I remember some of it." Damien leaned against her counter, arms crossed loosely. He didn't look arrogant, didn't look entitled. He looked tired in a way that expensive suits couldn't hide. "You helped me when the world was crashing down on top of me," he said quietly. "You didn't ask my name, didn't pull out your phone, didn't try to get something out of me." His eyes held hers. "You just helped." There was a sincerity in his voice she wasn't used to hearing. Not from anyone, and certainly not from someone who could buy her entire building before his morning coffee. Before she could respond, he reached into his jacket and placed a thick envelope on the table between them. Heavy. Expensive paper. Alani stiffened immediately. "No." He blinked. "You don't even know what—" "I know exactly what that means," she said sharply, her voice finding strength. "You think you need to pay off the poor girl for doing something kind, like my integrity is for sale, like kindness needs a price tag." Her hands trembled, but she kept them at her sides. "I'm not taking your money." Damien stared at her, really stared, like she was the first thing all week that had genuinely surprised him. His expression shifted. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. Slowly, he picked up the envelope and slipped it back into his jacket. "All right," he said softly. "Then I'll try something else." Before she could ask what that meant, there was a sharp knock at her door. 3 hard raps. Official. Commanding. Alani's stomach dropped. Damien sighed, but he didn't look surprised. "That'll be my head of security." Her mouth went dry. "Your what?" He walked past her, calm and unhurried, and opened her door. 4 men in dark suits stood in the narrow hallway. Expensive shoes, earpieces, eyes that scanned everything. Behind them, neighbors peeked from cracked doorways, phones already raised, whispering urgently. Damien stepped confidently into the hallway, his presence immediately commanding the space. "Lower your cameras," he said. Not loud, not angry, just absolute. The neighbors hesitated. Then, slowly, phones lowered. He raised his voice just enough for everyone to hear. "This woman offered me shelter, food, and dignity last night when I had nowhere else to go. Don't treat her differently today because of who I am. She deserves better than that." The hallway fell completely silent. Alani stood frozen inside her doorway, heart pounding, unable to process what she was witnessing. Someone had stood up for her. Publicly. With authority. That had never happened before. Not once in 27 years. Damien turned back to her, his expression softer now. "We need to talk about what happens next, Alani." The memory returned in full, washing over Alani like the rain that had poured that night. It was 2:47 a.m. when it happened. Alani remembered because she'd glanced at the clock above the register, calculating how many more hours until she could finally go home. Sam's 24-hour diner was nearly empty. Just her, the flickering fluorescent lights, and the perpetual smell of burnt coffee and fryer grease that no amount of bleach could ever fully erase. The linoleum floor was sticky beneath her sneakers as she mopped, moving methodically between tables with chipped formica tops and vinyl booths held together with duct tape. The coffee pot hissed on the burner. Outside, Rain hammered against the large windows, turning the streetlights into blurred halos of yellow. She hummed softly to herself an old gospel tune her grandmother used to sing. It was the only way to stay awake during these late shifts, when exhaustion pressed down like a physical weight and her tips for the night sat crumpled in her apron pocket, $23 and change. Then the door swung open violently, bells jangling. Alani looked up, mop frozen mid-stroke. A man stumbled in, and for a moment she thought he might collapse right there on the entrance mat. He was soaked through. Dress shirt plastered to his chest, expensive suit jacket torn at the shoulder, dark hair dripping water onto the floor. His breath came in ragged gasps, like he'd been running. There was a cut above his left eyebrow, fresh blood mixing with rainwater and streaking down his temple. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Raw, terrified, desperate. Not the eyes of someone being chased, but the eyes of someone running from something invisible and inescapable. "Sir?" Alani set the mop down carefully. "Are you okay?" He didn't answer immediately, just stood there, chest heaving, staring at her like he couldn't quite believe where he was. His hands trembled at his sides. She'd seen that look before. Different circumstances, different people, but always the same message. "I'm drowning." Without thinking, Alani moved toward him, grabbing clean bar towels from behind the counter. "Come sit down," she said gently, guiding him to the nearest booth. "You're bleeding." He sat heavily, like his legs had finally given out. Up close, she could see the quality of his clothes beneath the damage. Tailored fabric, expensive stitching, a watch on his wrist that probably cost more than her yearly rent. But none of that mattered right now. She wetted a towel with warm water from the soda gun and carefully cleaned the cut on his forehead. He winced, but didn't pull away. "This might need stitches," she said softly. "It's fine." His voice was rough, strained. I needed to get away." Alani didn't press. She'd learned long ago that sometimes people needed silence more than questions. She finished cleaning the wound, then disappeared into the back, returning with her only jacket, a thin denim thing with a broken zipper, and draped it around his shoulders. He looked up at her, confused. "You're shivering," she explained simply. Then she went to the grill and started making food. Grilled cheese, simple, warm, the kind of comfort that didn't require explanation. She worked quietly, the familiar rhythm soothing, even as her mind raced with questions she wouldn't ask. When she slid the plate in front of him along with hot coffee, he stared at it like he'd forgotten food existed. "Eat," she said, sliding into the booth across from him. "You look like you need it." He picked up the sandwich with shaking hands and took a bite. Then another. She watched him eat in silence, giving him space to be human. Finally, he spoke. "I'm suffocating." The words came out raw, unpolished, nothing like the carefully crafted statements she imagined a man in his position usually made. "The world." He set the sandwich down, running a hand through his wet hair. "Everyone wants something. The board wants expansion. Investors want returns. The media wants a story. Everyone demands perfection, constantly, endlessly." His voice cracked slightly. "They don't want a man. They want a machine that produces results and never breaks down." Alani leaned her elbows on the table, her dark eyes steady on his. "You're allowed to be human," she said quietly. "Even if they've forgotten that." He looked at her, really looked, like he was seeing her for the first time. Like those simple words were the most revolutionary thing anyone had said to him in years. "I don't even know your name," he whispered. "Alani." She offered a small smile. "And you don't have to tell me yours if you don't want to." Something in his expression shifted, softened, like a man who'd been holding his breath for years and was finally allowed to exhale. "Thank you, Alani." They sat in that diner booth for another hour. He talked, haltingly at first, then more freely, about the pressure, the isolation, the suffocating weight of expectations. She listened, offering no solutions, no platitudes, just presence. When the rain finally eased to a drizzle, she walked him through the dark streets of her neighborhood, past flickering streetlights and closed storefronts with iron gates, past corners where people huddled under overhangs and alleys that smelled of garbage and broken dreams. He didn't seem to notice the poverty around him, didn't look uncomfortable or out of place. He just walked beside her, wrapped in her cheap jacket, looking more at peace than he had all night. At her building's entrance, he stopped. "I don't know how to thank you properly." Alani shrugged. "You don't have to. Sometimes people just need a place to breathe." He studied her face in the dim light, memorizing it. "You don't know what you've given me tonight." She smiled softly. "Get some rest. Whoever's chasing you will still be there tomorrow, but at least you'll be ready." She unlocked her door and let him inside, offering her couch and a blanket that had seen too many winters. He accepted without argument, exhaustion finally claiming him. Alani watched him sleep for a moment, this strange, broken man who'd stumbled into her diner like a storm, before retreating to her own room. She had no idea that this single act of compassion would change everything, that the man on her couch would wake up determined to repay a debt she didn't think existed, that her life was about to transform in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. She only knew that tonight she'd helped someone who needed it. And for Alani Price, that had always been enough. The hallway cleared slowly, neighbors retreating behind their doors with reluctant whispers and lingering stares. The security team remained posted near the stairwell, silent sentinels in expensive suits that made the peeling wallpaper look even shabbier by comparison. Damien stepped back into Alani's apartment and closed the door gently behind him. She stood frozen in the middle of her tiny living room, arms wrapped around herself, trying to process what had just happened. Her mind felt like static, white noise where coherent thoughts should be. "You didn't have to do that," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, I did." Damien's tone was firm but not harsh. He moved back toward the kitchen, that same calm authority radiating from him. "Those people will talk regardless. Better they talk about respect than speculation." He picked up the coffee he'd made earlier, took a sip, then set it down with deliberate care. "Alani, I need you to understand something." He turned to face her fully. "Last night, you didn't help a billionaire. You helped a man who had forgotten he was allowed to be vulnerable, to be human. You gave me something I haven't had in years." "A sandwich?" she offered weakly, trying to inject humor into a situation that felt increasingly surreal. His lips quirked slightly. Perspective. Before she could respond, he reached into his jacket, a different pocket this time, and pulled out an envelope. Not thick with cash like before. This one was slim, official, bearing a corporate letterhead embossed in silver. He placed it on her scratched coffee table. "What is that?" Suspicion crept into her voice. "Open it." Alani approached cautiously, like the envelope might explode. She picked it up with trembling fingers, broke the seal, and pulled out the document inside. Her eyes scanned the first line, then the second. Her knees buckled. She sat down hard on the couch. "You—" She couldn't get the words out. "You bought Sam's diner?" "It was listed for sale," Damien said simply, as if purchasing businesses was as casual as buying groceries. "The owner wanted to retire. I closed the deal this morning." Alani's hand shook as she held the paper. The words swam before her eyes. "Management contract position. General manager. Sam's diner salary. Benefits. Operational authority." "So what?" she said, voice tight. "I get to keep waitressing for the rest of my life? Just with a different boss?" "No." Damien moved closer, crouching down so they were at eye level. "You get to run it." She stared at him. "I'm a waitress, Damien. I take orders and refill coffee and mop floors at 3 in the morning. I don't manage anything." "That's not true, and you know it." His voice carried quiet conviction. "You've been managing that diner for years. Inventory when Sam forgets, scheduling when employees call out, handling difficult customers, training new hires, keeping everything running when it should have fallen apart a dozen times over." He gestured at the contract. "The only thing you haven't had is the title, or the pay, or the recognition." Alani's chest tightened. She wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, that she was just a girl from the hood who barely finished community college and had nothing to offer. But deep down, she knew he was right. She had been running that place, covering for Sam's mistakes, smoothing over problems, holding everything together with determination and coffee-fueled stubbornness. "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why would you do this?" Damien stood, running a hand through his hair, the first sign of uncertainty she'd seen from him. "Because the board of my company is pressuring me to step down, because investors think I've gone soft, because last week I sat in a meeting where 12 people argued about quarterly projections and not one of them asked if what we were building actually mattered." His voice grew quieter, more intense. "And then I walked into a diner at 3 in the morning, broken and exhausted. And a woman I'd never met treated me like I was worth caring about. Not my money, not my connections. Me." Alani's eyes burned. "I still don't understand why you care this much." Damien was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his words were careful, weighted with meaning. "Because I've built an empire surrounded by people who think caring is weakness, who measure worth in profit margins and stock prices." He paused. "And I realized I don't want that anymore. I want to build something different, something that actually helps people the way you helped me." He stepped closer, not intimidating, just honest. "And I want to do it with people who understand that success isn't just about what you accumulate. It's about who you lift up along the way." The apartment felt impossibly small. Alani could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of the contract in her hands like it might pull her through the floor. "Why me specifically?" she whispered. "You could hire anyone, someone with an MBA, someone who actually knows what they're doing." Damien's expression softened into something achingly sincere. "Because for the first time in a long time, I walked into a room and didn't feel alone." The words hung in the air between them. Alani's breath caught. She'd spent her entire life invisible, just another tired face in a city full of people struggling to survive. No one saw her. No one valued her beyond what she could serve or clean or provide. And now this man, this impossibly powerful, wealthy man, was telling her she mattered. "If you want the job, it's yours," Damien said, straightening. "If not, I'll respect that decision. Either way, I will still be grateful for what you did." He picked up his jacket from where it hung over her kitchen chair. "My team will wait outside while you think it over. Take whatever time you need." He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the knob. "Alani?" She looked up, eyes wet. "Thank you for giving me a place where I could finally breathe." Then he was gone, the door clicking softly shut behind him. Alani sat alone in her apartment, the contract trembling in her hands. Morning sunlight streamed through the cracked blinds, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny possibilities. Her future sat on cheap paper in a room that had never held much hope. For the first time in 27 years, someone had seen her, really seen her, and offered her a chance to become something more. She pressed the contract to her chest, closed her eyes, and finally let herself cry. Not from sadness. From the terrifying, exhilarating possibility that maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change. 3 days later, Damian Brooks walked into Sam's diner at exactly 9:47 a.m. He'd traded his power suit for dark jeans and a casual blazer, the kind of effortless expensive that didn't need labels to announce itself. His presence still commanded attention, but today it felt softer somehow, less corporate titan, more human being choosing to be present. The diner looked different in small, deliberate ways. The flickering fluorescent lights had been replaced with warm LEDs that made the space feel welcoming instead of institutional. Fresh paint covered the water-stained walls. Nothing fancy, just clean cream that made everything brighter. The vinyl booths had been reupholstered, the cracked Formica tables replaced with solid wood, but the soul of the place remained. Same layout, same coffee smell, same bell above the door. And standing behind the counter, wearing a crisp white shirt and dark slacks, was Alani. No apron, no order pad stuck in her pocket, just a brand new name tag pinned neatly to her chest. Manager, Alani Price. She looked up when the bell chimed, and for a moment their eyes met across the diner. Something unspoken passed between them. Acknowledgement, gratitude, possibility. Damian approached the counter slowly, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Good morning, Miss Price." "Mr. Brooks." Her voice was steady, professional, but warmth flickered beneath. "What can I get you?" "Just coffee," he said, "and maybe a moment of your time." Alani poured a fresh cup, her first official act as manager, and slid it across the counter. Their fingers brushed briefly as he accepted it, and neither pulled away immediately. "I heard you accepted the position," Damian said quietly. "I did." Alani lifted her chin, meeting his gaze directly. "But I need you to understand something first." He waited. "I didn't do this because you're a billionaire," she said firmly. "I didn't take this job because of your money or your influence, or because I owe you something." Damian's expression remained calm, attentive. "I took it because you saw something in me that I've been too tired and too beaten down to see in myself." Her voice wavered slightly but didn't break. "You offered me respect, opportunity, a chance to prove I'm more than circumstances made me." She placed her hand flat on the counter between them. "So this partnership, if that's what we're calling it, it's built on mutual respect, not charity, not pity. Understood?" Damian set his coffee down carefully. When he spoke, his voice carried the same sincerity she'd heard that rainy night. "I didn't offer this because you're a waitress," he said softly. "I offered it because you're someone who leads with compassion and still has the strength to demand dignity. That's rare. That's valuable." He paused, his dark eyes holding hers. "And for the record, I've never considered this charity. I consider it the smartest investment I've made in years." Something in Alani's chest loosened, a knot she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. "Good," she whispered. "Then we understand each other?" "We do." The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither was quite ready to name. The diner hummed with morning activity around them. Customers trickling in, the coffee maker hissing, the cook calling orders through the kitchen window. But in that small space at the counter, the world narrowed to just the two of them. Damian cleared his throat gently. "The board meeting yesterday went better than expected." "Oh?" Alani leaned against the counter, genuinely curious. "I told them I'm not stepping down, that I'm refocusing the company's priorities toward community investment and sustainable growth." A wry smile crossed his face. They weren't thrilled, but they're listening. "What changed?" she asked. He looked at her for a long moment. "I remembered that the point of building something isn't just accumulation, it's impact. It's caring about the people your decisions affect." He took a sip of coffee. "Someone reminded me of that recently." Alani felt heat rise to her cheeks. I just made you a sandwich. You did more than that. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. You gave me permission to be human again. The bell above the door chimed as more customers entered. A family with 2 young kids, an elderly couple holding hands, workers from the nearby factory on their break. The diner was filling up, coming alive with conversation and the clatter of silverware. Alani glanced around at the space, her space now, and felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Pride, purpose, hope. I should get back to work, she said reluctantly. Of course. Damien stood, pulling out his wallet. Coffee's on the house, Alani said quickly. Manager's privilege. He smiled, a genuine warm expression that transformed his entire face. Then I'll have to come back often. I hope you do. The words came out softer than she intended, carrying weight beyond professional courtesy. Damien held her gaze. Count on it. He turned to leave, then paused at the door, looking back. Alani? Yeah? This is only the beginning. The diner, I mean. There's more we can build, if you're interested. She straightened, feeling the weight of possibility settle over her shoulders like a mantle she was finally ready to wear. I'm listening. Good. His eyes held promises he wasn't quite ready to voice. We'll talk soon. Then he was gone, the bell chiming his exit. Alani stood behind the counter, watching through the window as he climbed into a sleek black car that looked as out of place in this neighborhood as he'd looked in her kitchen 3 days ago. But somehow, it didn't feel wrong anymore. A customer called for a refill. Another asked about the daily special. Her assistant manager, promoted from line cook just yesterday, poked his head out from the kitchen with a question about inventory. Alani took a deep breath and stepped fully into her new role. She had a business to run, a team to lead, a future to build. And somewhere in that future, she suspected, was a billionaire who'd stumbled into her life during a rainstorm and refused to leave. Not because he needed saving, but because somehow, impossibly, they'd saved each other. The diner filled with warmth and noise and life. Alani moved through it with new confidence, greeting customers, solving problems, making decisions that actually mattered. For the first time in 27 years, she wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. And when the morning rush finally slowed and she found a quiet moment to breathe, she touched the name tag on her chest and allowed herself a small, private smile. This was just the beginning of her career, of her transformation, and maybe, just maybe, of something else entirely, something worth building, together.
Thank you for watching Life in Stories. If Alani and Damien's journey moved you, please like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs hope today. Drop a comment telling us what touched your heart most. Your support means everything. Until next time, keep believing in second chances.